Okay, so the next element we need to look at is what is this music right here? In other words, we have the subject, right? The subject goes to about there, little transition thing, and then the answer comes in, right? But this first voice keeps going. It hasn't started the subject over because the subject is in a new voice now. So what's happening here? What is that music? That is what we call the countersubject. Now, we might call it two different things, but let's call it the countersubject for the moment, then I'll explain to you the other thing. So, this is counterpoint to the subject that's happening during the answer. So, I guess I should say counterpoint to the answer. It's actually both, because it's a countersubject, right? So, we have subject and countersubject. Countersubject is music that's happening as a counterpoint to the subject or to the answer. It's actually both. In this case, it's to the answer. So now we have two kinds of countersubjects, sort of. There's the countersubject itself, but the countersubject might not be actually a countersubject. The word countersubject implies that this is kind of like another subject. It's another thing that we're going to hear repeating over and over and over. And that may or may not be true. And I don't actually know if it is in this one or not yet. So let's figure it out. So the question would be, does this music appear again after the next entrance of the subject? Do we have the same music? So let's find out. So here's our answer. Let's find the next entry of our subject, which I think is right here. Right, so that's our next entry, is right there. So I would expect the counter subject to be happening here. So what I'm looking for is this. Is that happening here? Not really. But that's the same as that. It can be transposed, that's okay. But I don't really hear it here. I see it here again. So let me get this back in your head. I see it here again. But then it goes off somewhere different. So I don't think this is, strictly speaking, a counter subject. Because if it was a counter subject, we would expect to see it again and it being used like another subject, really. So instead, we call this the other thing. And the other thing is free counterpoint. So free counterpoint means that while the answer is happening, there's still other music happening in the other voices, which is just one voice at this moment, but it's a counterpoint to the answer or the subject that isn't going to be used again over and over and over like another subject, but it's just free counterpoint. It's some more notes to fill in the space. So let me define those two things for you one more time. Countersubject means it's counterpoint to the subject or the answer that is going to be reused again and again throughout the piece like a second subject. Free counterpoint means it's counterpoint to the subject or the answer that is not going to be reused again throughout the piece. It's free. It's somewhat more of a disposable kind of counterpoint. So we determine it whether this counterpoint is a countersubject or a free counterpoint by trying to find it again throughout the piece. It's kind of here, but it's kind of in the wrong spot to really work. Here's our subject again. It's not there. There's something different here. So this is all free counterpoint. Here's our subject again. And do we get it there? Oh, we do. We kind of get it there. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we just don't get it this second time. Let's find another entrance. There's one. That's different, but it's really close. Let's go forward one more. Here we go. Very different here. So we get it sometimes here and not sometimes here. So I'm going to reverse my opinion and say I do think it's a counter subject because we do get it again. We do get that music later. It's not every time, but we do. It does get reused. So let's call that a counter subject. We have to look around a little bit more to find it, but it's there. It is reused. So I'm okay with calling that a counter subject. Cool. So those are the two things, counter subject and free counterpoint.